She was handcuffed on the side of the road, cameras rolling as officers questioned her identity. Skeptical, dismissive. That is, until two black SUVs arrived, and everything the cops thought they knew unraveled in an instant. The sun still clung to the edge of the horizon when Officer Ryan Donnelly flicked on his blinker and pulled in behind a black SUV near the intersection of King Street and Broadmoor in Reston, Virginia. Broken taillight, nothing serious. He figured he'd issue a warning and be on his way. That was the plan. Running a hand over his tired face, he stepped out of the cruiser. "Evening," he said, approaching the driver's side window. The tinted glass lowered halfway. Behind it sat a black woman, maybe in her late 30s. Slim build, chin-length box braids, dark blue blazer. No music, no movement. Just still, composed calm. "License and registration, please." Without hesitation, she handed over a small leather wallet. "Your name, ma'am?" "Talia Monroe." Ryan opened the ID and paused. It looked official, but unfamiliar. A photo, a federal seal, and a string of letters he didn't recognize. The badge number suggested a federal agency, but it wasn't one he could immediately place. Homeland Security? Secret Service? He'd been on the force for 10 years, he'd seen plenty. This felt different. This some kind of joke? He muttered under his breath. Talia remained composed. "It's legitimate." "What agency? This doesn't say CIA or FBI. I'm not at liberty to disclose that." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Is this a fake ID? You know it's a felony to give false credentials to law enforcement?" "It's not fake," she said, calm as ever. He returned to his cruiser and radioed dispatch. "Need backup." Pulled over a woman in a black SUV. "Her ID looks federal, but I've never seen anything like it. Doesn't check out." Within 5 minutes, another squad car arrived. 2 young officers, likely rookies, stepped out and kept their distance. As Ryan returned to the SUV, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Talia sighed, unbuckled her seatbelt, and opened the door. No resistance. One of the rookies approached, voice slightly shaky. "I'm going to have to place you in cuffs until we can verify your identity." "You're making a mistake," she said evenly. "You can explain that at the station." People on the sidewalk began to slow down. Curiosity piqued. A few pulled out their phones. One woman leaned toward a companion and whispered, "Is she being arrested?" A man nearby began recording. Talia didn't resist. She turned without a word, calmly allowing the cuffs to lock around her wrists. As her blazer shifted, it revealed a small earpiece tucked discreetly behind her right ear. Barely noticeable, but Officer Ryan saw it. He said nothing. She was too calm, and that unsettled him more than if she'd made a scene. But what he hadn't seen yet was the smart watch on her left wrist. Just before she exited the vehicle, she had tilted it ever so slightly and whispered something, too low for anyone to catch. Now she stood still, hands cuffed behind her back, the metal biting just enough to leave a mark. The 3 officers surrounded her in a loose triangle. The rookie to her left was visibly nervous, shifting on the balls of his feet. The one behind her kept adjusting his radio, as if waiting for orders. Ryan remained silent, eyes fixed on her. "You live around here?" he asked. "I was just passing through," she answered. "Where were you headed?" "Back home." "Where's home?" She met his gaze. "I think you already know I can't answer that." Ryan stepped a little closer. "Look, acting mysterious doesn't help your case. Right now, you're a woman with unverified credentials refusing to answer basic questions. You have what you need," she replied. "You just don't recognize it." That got under his skin. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Steady, unshaken, no signs of stress. Most people in her position would be sweating, stumbling over words, casting nervous glances. But she was composed, unbothered. She didn't even look at the cameras recording her. From the crowd, a teenage girl in a red hoodie called out, "Yo, y'all really cuffing her for a busted light?" "She didn't do anything." "Step back," one of the rookies warned, but the crowd was growing, not dispersing. 5 people became 8. A man on a bicycle pulled over. More phones came out, all aimed at the scene. Still, Talia didn't move, didn't speak, just stood silently. Ryan tapped his radio. Dispatch. Any word on that ID match? A pause. Static. Then, still checking. Nothing in the standard database. His jaw clenched. He stepped away and motioned to the rookie. Did you pat her down? Not yet. Do it. The rookie stepped forward, and that's when Talia finally broke her silence. I wouldn't do that. The officer hesitated. Why not? She turned just enough for her voice to carry. Because if you lay hands on me, you might trigger a response you can't walk back from. The rookie froze. Is that a threat? No, she said evenly. It's a statement. That's when they heard it. Screeching tires. 2 black SUVs barreled down the road. No lights, no sirens. Just the aggressive howl of rubber against asphalt. They skidded to a stop half a block away, and all 4 doors swung open. 4 men in suits emerged, moving with silent precision, like they'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. The tallest flashed a badge. Federal Protective Service. That woman is in our custody. Release her immediately. Ryan stepped forward. I don't know who you think you are, but until we confirm her identity, she stays in custody. The tall man didn't back down. He stepped in close. You're standing at the edge of a serious federal incident, he said calmly. I suggest you release her before it becomes something much bigger. A second agent leaned in and whispered something no one else could hear. The agent leaned in and whispered something into the ear of the rookie standing behind Talia. Whatever he said drained the color from the young officer's face. His shoulders sank like lead. Pale and wide-eyed, he looked over at Ryan but said nothing. Ryan felt the shift instantly. This wasn't a prank. These weren't wannabe feds playing dress-up. They were the real thing. He recognized the badge, had seen it only once during a classified training session 5 years ago. Rare, off the books. The whispering agent turned to Talia. Are you okay, Agent Monroe? She gave a subtle nod. He reached into his coat and retrieved a device, thicker than a smartphone, sleek and unfamiliar. Holding it up to her ID, he scanned. The screen turned green. A sharp beep followed. Confirmed, he said. Ryan blinked. What? What agency are you with? He asked, his voice low. The tall agent gave him a long look. She works for people who don't carry business cards. But even as that mystery began to unfold, another threat quietly surfaced. Not everyone in the growing crowd on the sidewalk had come just to watch. One of them had been waiting, watching for Talia to slip. But she hadn't. Her hands were still cuffed, yet her composure was unshaken, controlled. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of experience. Like she'd been in far worse situations. The agent who scanned her ID gave a small nod, and the rookie behind her moved first. Still visibly rattled, he stepped forward and unlocked the cuffs without a word. Talia flexed her wrists, rolling her fingers. No drama, no glares. Just a quiet return to freedom. Ryan stepped back, trying to reorient himself. You can't just show up and override a lawful traffic stop. The tall agent, now with his badge clipped clearly to his lapel, stepped in close. His voice dropped to a calm, steady warning. Officer, Donnelly, your traffic stop almost triggered a national security breach. Agent Monroe has been deep undercover for over a year. She's tracking something way beyond your jurisdiction. You pulling her out on the side of the road jeopardized everything. Ryan didn't reply, couldn't. His radio crackled. Dispatch here, still no match on that ID. Wait, scratch that. We're getting a ping. Secure channel, stand by. But it was already too late. Talia stepped past the officers without a glance, heading straight for the agent who had identified her as one of their own. They spoke quietly, low voices, tight cadence. It felt less like a crisis and more like a scheduled debrief, as if they'd rehearsed this exact outcome. The agent looked past her, toward the black SUV she'd been driving. Did anyone touch the vehicle? Just me, Ryan admitted. Don't touch it again. Another agent circled around, opened the trunk, and lifted the false floor panel. Beneath it, a hard case. Small, maybe the size of a thick book. He popped it open. Inside were labeled compartments, wiring, materials that didn't belong in civilian hands. She was transporting. Ryan began but didn't finish. Talia glanced back. That's classified. Everything's classified with you people, he muttered. She paused, then said, more to herself than anyone else, sometimes the people you're supposed to trust turn out to be the ones selling you out. The words hit like a gut punch. Ryan stiffened, but before he could respond, she turned away. A voice rose from the crowd. Yo, what is this? She CIA or something? The agents turned, now facing a full-blown sidewalk audience. Phones were wide. Still up recording? Please stop filming, one agent said firmly. Why? Asked the girl in the red hoodie. So you can act like this never happened? Talia stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice or posture with authority. She simply looked at the crowd and said, You have every right to film. Just understand, what happened here tonight won't stay on the surface for long, and not everything you see is as simple as it looks. Her demeanor shifted suddenly. She tilted her head slightly, scanning the crowd. Then her eyes locked on someone near the back, a man in a baseball cap pulled low, hoodie zipped up to his chin. He wasn't holding a phone. He wasn't recording. He was watching. Target acquired, Talia whispered into her smartwatch. The agent snapped into action, turning to follow her gaze. The man in the hoodie realized he'd been made and bolted. One of the agents took off after him without hesitation. Ryan instinctively stepped forward, still trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Who the hell was that? Someone. Who wasn't supposed to know I was in town, Talia replied. The crowd quickly cleared a path as the man sprinted down an alley. The pursuing agent pulled a compact launcher from his coat, aimed and fired. A muted pop echoed off the brick walls. Then silence. Moments later, the agent emerged from the alley dragging the man, now cuffed and limping, a bloodied sleeve trailing. His hoodie had shifted, revealing a thin wire beneath his shirt. Tracker. Not a mic, the agent confirmed. Talia let out a breath. They were watching for me. That traffic stop wasn't random. They baited me onto that route. Ryan stared at her, stunned. You're saying someone fed your route to them? Talia didn't respond directly. Instead, her eyes flicked to the rookie officer who had cuffed her earlier. Then to his belt radio. No words, just a look, a seed of doubt. If her route had been compromised, it wasn't just coincidence. It was betrayal. Someone in the precinct wasn't just careless. They were actively working against her. And Talia wasn't going to let that slide. Later that night, the precinct building on Ashburn Road was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. More like it was holding its breath. She arrived alone. No black SUVs, no agents flanking her. The man who'd been captured had already been transferred to a secure federal facility. Talia had made only one request: time alone at the local precinct. This was her territory now. No cuffs, no handlers, just her dark blazer, her badge, and unshakable resolve. The officer at the front desk looked up as she walked in, clearly startled. Can I help you, ma'am? Talia didn't break stride. She held up a laminated card, credentials he didn't recognize, and nodded toward the hallway. Internal audit. Secure the floor. I'm not here for show. 5 minutes later, the word had made its way through the building. Officer Ryan Donnelly sat in the break room, a half-eaten microwave burrito on the table in front of him, when another officer poked his head in. She's here. Ryan looked up. Monroe? The officer nodded. Walked in like she owns the place. Says she's conducting an internal audit. Command told us to cooperate. Ryan swallowed hard, left his food where it sat, and stepped into the hallway. Talia moved through the precinct like she belonged there, because, in a way, she did. Not this exact building, but others like it. Small-town departments with just enough cracks for danger to seep in unnoticed, or worse, ignored. She found the internal server room, locked, but not to her. From her coat pocket, she pulled a key, card, pressed it to the scanner. A green light blinked. The door clicked open. Inside, she worked fast, plugged in a drive, pulled the logs she needed. She wasn't here to make a scene or assign blame. She was here to trace the breach. Out in the main corridor, Officer Ryan Donnelly caught up with her. You just walk in here like you own the place now. I don't have time to walk you through the chain of command, she replied, not slowing down. He stepped in her path. I deserve to know what's going on. Talia met his eyes, unflinching. You nearly blew a national security operation. You want a memo for that? That's not fair. I was doing my job. No, she said, quiet but firm. You were doing what you thought your job was. There's a difference. They locked eyes for a moment. Then her voice softened, but not her edge. When I gave you my ID, you didn't question it because protocol. You doubted it because you didn't think someone like me could carry that badge. Ryan tried to respond, but the words didn't come. Talia turned. I'm not here to fix your perspective. I'm here to find the leak. Before she could take another step, someone entered the hallway. Deputy Chase Lorne, late 30s, stocky, with a perfectly shaved head and a uniform too crisp for someone. On the night shift, his eyes landed on her. Instantly cold. Well, well, he said, voice thick with mockery. The ghost walks among us. Ryan looked between them. You two know each other? Talia didn't blink. He worked with me, overseas, brief assignment until he vanished mid-op. Chase smirked. Vanished? That's your version. You walked away with a phone full of encrypted contacts. Left 3 dead bodies in a safe house. My version's the only one that made it back. Ryan stiffened. Wait, he was CIA? Not anymore, Talia said flatly. Chase's eyes flicked to her wrist. Still wearing that old watch? That trick still work? You'd be surprised what hasn't changed, she replied. He stepped closer. So what now? You come back to play hero in my precinct? I'm not here to perform, she said. I came for one reason. From her coat, she pulled a small recording device and pressed play. Chase's voice filled the hallway, clipped, slightly distorted. She leaves that drop point by 7:10. She always takes the same route. I can guarantee. It. Ryan's face went pale. Chase didn't flinch. I tapped the signal this morning, Talia said, her voice like ice. You've been leaking intel to foreign contacts for months. You fed them my location tonight, trying to finish what you started overseas. Chase laughed, a sharp, bitter sound, then lunged at her. Ryan reacted first. He intercepted Chase mid-strike, and the two slammed into the wall. A chair toppled. Tension exploded, but Talia didn't panic. She stepped forward calmly, held up her badge once more. Chase Lorne, you're under arrest for treason, unauthorized foreign collaboration, and obstruction of a federal investigation. Chase kept struggling, snarling threats, but 2 more officers burst in and wrestled him to the ground. Talia didn't blink, didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat, because this wasn't the finale. This was just another piece of a larger puzzle, falling into place. The holding cell door slammed shut behind Chase with a clang that echoed through the precinct. Talia stood just outside the bars, arms folded, gaze steady. Not triumphant, just resolute. She didn't say a word, she didn't have to. Chase was already unraveling, pacing his cell, trying to reclaim control through his voice now that everything else had been stripped away. You think this ends with me? He snarled. You think you've won something? Talia tilted her head, calm and steady. You're not the prize, Chase. You were just the distraction. He froze. What's that supposed to mean? She stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. The man in the hoodie, the one who followed me tonight, he wasn't there by chance, he was sent. You fed someone my route, and they planted him, but he didn't recognize me. Know why? Because you gave them an old photo. Back when I still had long hair. Her voice remained cold, precise. That tells me you're not as plugged in as you think. You don't even know who's really calling the shots. For the first time, Chase looked rattled. You're good at betrayal, she went on. But you've always been a pawn, Chase, and you just proved it. He let out a dry, bitter laugh, but it had no weight behind it. You think you've got it figured out? You don't even have the thread, Monroe. Hell, you don't even have the needle. Talia didn't respond. She turned and walked away, leaving him behind the bars. Outside the cell block, Ryan was waiting. He looked different now, shoulders hunched, mouth drawn in a thin, regretful line. He'd heard everything. So, he was one of yours? He asked quietly. Talia shook her head. No, he was one of theirs, pretending to be one of mine. Ryan nodded slowly, taking it in. Why didn't the system flag him? Shouldn't there have been red flags? Talia sighed. You'd be surprised what a clean badge and a few months of silence can hide. Chase dropped off the radar just long enough to make people believe he was dead. Turns out, he was just switching sides. Ryan rubbed his forehead. So what now? We keep going. In the evidence room, Talia retrieved the small black case from her SUV, the one the federal agents had discovered earlier. She opened it, this time letting Ryan see. Inside, satellite maps, surveillance photos, coordinates, classified stills, audio clips from tapped calls in multiple languages, and in every folder, every file, a recurring face. That's who I was. Tracking tonight, she said, tapping the photo. Real name unknown, codename Ashir, freelance operator. Works with whoever pays, smuggles weapons, data, people. Ryan studied the photos. So what was he doing here? In Reston? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Talia replied. He doesn't linger in places like this unless someone gives him a reason. You think Chase brought him? She shook her head. Chase doesn't have that kind of reach, or the brains. But someone used him to lure me into that arrest. They were hoping I'd get flagged, maybe even pulled from the assignment. Ryan looked at her, troubled. And what if the arrest had gone sideways? Talia met his eyes, unwavering. Then you'd be standing in the middle of an international disaster, and I'd probably be dead. Silence settled between them. Then finally, Ryan spoke. What do you need from me? Talia raised an eyebrow. That's a change. I didn't. No, he said quietly. About Chase, about you, I made assumptions. She studied his face. Are you sure you're ready for what helping me actually means? Try me. She nodded once. Then start with the surveillance grid. If Ashir was anywhere nearby, traffic cams might have caught him. Get me access. Ryan didn't say another word. He just turned and left the room. Talia stayed behind and tapped her smartwatch again. A crackling voice came through the earpiece. It was the agent who had chased the man in the hoodie. We pulled his phone, the voice reported. Encrypted messages, photos of your SUV taken an hour before the stop. Someone was tracking you. Long before tonight, Talia clenched her jaw, fully grasping the gravity of it. Keep digging, she ordered. Then ended the call, closed the case, and locked it up. But deep down, she already knew the truth. If someone had eyes on her before she even reached that intersection, the operation wasn't just compromised. It was bleeding from the inside. An hour later, Talia sat alone in the precinct's evidence room, the faint hum of the overhead light filling the silence. Her fingers flew across the keyboard of a government-secured laptop as surveillance feeds, facial recognition overlays, and time-stamped GPS data lit up the screen. This was her domain. But what she uncovered twisted her stomach. Ashir hadn't just been nearby. He'd been parked directly across from a middle school, 4 blocks away, engine off, windows up, sitting there for 43 minutes. Long enough to watch parents picking up their kids, long enough to time police patrols, long enough to plan. She zoomed in on the license plate. It was stolen. Not surprising. But what caught her off guard was the second man who appeared 20 minutes in. Blurry, unidentifiable at first, but he walked up to Ashir's window and handed him a small envelope. Ryan stepped in holding a flash drive. I pulled the rest of the traffic cam footage. Looks like he circled your arrest location twice before your stop. Without looking up, Talia took the drive. You recognize this man? She asked, tilting the screen toward him. He leaned in, straining to see. Wait, yeah. His voice cut off. His jaw moved, but no sound came. Then he nodded. That's Arthur Vexley, city planner for Fairfax. Has clearance to access traffic systems, public building schematics. Assigned to the Homeland Security Liaison Committee 2 years ago. Never struck me as dirty. He's not dirty, Talia corrected. He's compromised, or being used. Ryan sat down across from her. So this guy's here. What's his deal? Talia replied, he doesn't operate like a terrorist, moves like a courier. paid to carry classified materials across borders and through digital dead zones. No ideology, just contracts. If he's here in a city like this working with someone like Vexley, it means someone's gearing up for a transfer. Ryan leaned back. What kind of transfer? The kind that doesn't involve cash or goods, she said. Data, personnel, secrets. Talia opened another folder and pulled up a map of several public buildings. A data center, a federal courthouse, a communications hub. All were on Vexley's oversight list. All had experienced power testing delays last week. And all used the same internal control contractor, a company called Thermax Solutions. Ryan frowned. That's a federal contractor. We've used them for traffic light sensors. Exactly, Talia said. If you compromise one Thermax node, you could jump across multiple departments, including law enforcement, which might explain how Chase knew your route. Talia nodded. That's the connection. It wasn't just Chase leaking intel. Someone inside the city's infrastructure was in on it too. The arrest wasn't only bait. It was a distraction. Cover for the real transfer, happening somewhere else. She checked the time. And that transfer, it's happening within the next 2 hours, I'm sure of it. Ryan stood. So, where do we go? You don't, she said. Not officially. This is still outside your jurisdiction. But I need access to the city's maintenance tunnels. Vexley has clearance, which means he probably knows where the blind spots are. He rubbed the back of his neck. You sure you want to go in there alone? Talia gave him a dry look. That's the job. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. It was the agent from earlier. We've got eyes on Ashir again, he said. He's leaving a hardware warehouse on Knox Boulevard, carrying something small headed toward the courthouse district. Talia snapped the laptop shut. That's it, that's the transfer. Ryan moved to block the door. I'm going with you. I don't need backup. I'm not backup. I'm a witness. Whatever happens next, I'm not letting this department stay blind. Talia stared at him for a moment, then handed him a small pouch. There's a vest in there. You'll need it. But as they geared up to leave, neither of them realized just how deep the conspiracy ran, or how far someone would go to keep one buried secret from ever surfacing. It was just past midnight when Talia and Ryan entered the old maintenance tunnel, off Frying Pan Road. Built during the Cold War, it was one of the city's forgotten access points, neglected by planners, ignored by everyone else. The smell of rust, mold, and damp concrete filled the air. Every step echoed, a rhythm louder than the silence and heavier than words. Talia moved ahead, a flashlight clipped to her collar, casting harsh beams across the tunnel's edges. Watch the corners, she muttered. Ashir moves quiet. Ryan kept close. He hadn't said much since they left the precinct, but his breathing had changed. He wasn't just nervous. He was focused, trying to keep up, trying to prove he belonged here. 50 yards in, they hit a junction. And there he was, Ashir, slim, mid-40s. Olive skin, faint stubble, a leather jacket zipped halfway up. He stood calmly, holding a sleek silver case in his left hand. His expression barely shifted when he saw them. You're early, he said. You're sloppy, Talia replied. Ashir offered a faint smile. You were always quick with words, quicker with a weapon. You carrying tonight? Ryan glanced at her. Talia didn't respond. She didn't have to. I want the case, she said, stepping forward. Ashir raised an eyebrow. You think I came all this way just to hand it over? You came all this way to stay alive. Those are two different objectives. Behind them, faint metallic clinks echoed. Someone closing a storm grate above. Talia's eyes flicked toward the sound. You bring someone? Ashir gave a lazy shrug. Just the broker, he doesn't like to be seen. Then he's in the wrong line of work. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind the tunnel wall. Cold, calm, and close. You've already lost, Monroe. Ryan turned toward the voice as another man stepped into view. Arthur Vexley. He looked rougher than the photo in his personnel file. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt, and he held a gun with an unsteady hand. I used to admire your work, he said, voice tight. You stayed off-grid longer than anyone I ever tracked. Talia didn't flinch. And now you're standing in a drain tunnel with a stolen sidearm and a head full of justifications. I'm standing in the future, he snapped. You're clinging to a system that's already collapsed. Ashir shifted, his fingers hovering near the latch on the case. Talia's eyes flicked down. She caught it instantly. No, she said sharply. You open that case, I end this right now. Ryan raised his weapon. Vexley let out a laugh. You think this ends with a bullet? No, it ends quietly, with your file buried under 10 layers of red tape and a story no one will tell. You're leaking personnel movements to hostile networks, Talia said evenly. That case doesn't hold intelligence. It holds access. If it gets out, 6 agents disappear before sunrise. Ashir's face shifted, just enough for Talia to see it. He hadn't known. They lied to you, she said to him. You're not delivering cash or a deal. You're moving names, real names. And once you hand that off, you're disposable. Ashir's jaw tightened. I want the case, she repeated. Or I release the alley footage, your face, your contact, your plates. She's bluffing, Vexley said, voice rising. No, Ashir replied quietly. She's not. In one swift motion, Ashir pivoted and drove the metal case into Vexley's ribs. The man collapsed with a grunt, gun skittering across the concrete. Talia lunged, grabbed the case, and kicked the weapon out of reach. Ashir stepped back, hands raised. I never agreed to kill anyone. I was told it was just documents. Talia's eyes stayed on him. Choosing survival doesn't make you innocent. He gave a single nod. But I'm not your enemy. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned to Ryan. Call it in. Ryan's hands trembled as he radioed for backup, giving their exact location and requesting containment. His eyes kept flicking between Ashir and the groaning Vexley, who was struggling to sit up. Talia stood still, the case clutched tightly in her hands. Then, almost under her breath, she said, You want to know the worst part? Ryan looked over. What? This wasn't supposed to happen here. This was supposed to be routine, quiet, clean. Her voice grew heavier. Now an entire city's going to be flooded with questions it's not ready to answer. Above their heads, the city still slept. But 2 secrets had already been exposed, and neither Talia nor Ryan believed they'd be buried again before dawn. By morning, the courthouse district was in full lockdown. Marked patrol cars lined every block. The press hadn't broken the story yet, but it was only a matter of time. Inside a sealed federal briefing room just outside Reston, Talia sat across from 2 officials, one from the Office of Counterintelligence, the other from the Department of Justice. Neither smiled. Both carried thick folders with her name on the front. She wasn't surprised. You broke protocol, one of them began, flipping through notes. You compromised a classified operation, acted without authorization in a local precinct, and collaborated with a civilian officer outside of formal clearance. Talia leaned forward, ready to answer. I also stopped a classified data breach, Talia said evenly, neutralized 2 domestic threats, and recovered an access key that could have exposed safe assets across 6 countries. The room fell, silent. The second official cleared his throat. We've reviewed everything, body cam footage, security feeds, your watch recordings. He looked up, expression unreadable. You were right. Talia didn't nod. She already knew. Outside, the briefing room, Ryan waited near a vending machine, nursing a bitter cup of coffee. He hadn't slept and probably wouldn't for a while. When she emerged, he offered a faint half-smile. They read you the riot act. They tried. He nodded, hesitating. So what now? Talia paused. Now they'll sweep it under. The rug, call it a local miscommunication. Chase's file will disappear. Vexley's access logs will be buried. Ashir will be listed as detained under confidential cooperation. It'll all be polished up by noon. And you? She gave him a dry look. I'll be reassigned. My face is burned here. Ryan leaned back against the wall. I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm sorry. Talia raised an eyebrow. For what? For the stop. For not seeing what you were carrying. She held his gaze a moment too long. You made a bad call, she said. But you didn't double down on it. That's what matters. He swallowed. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, she said, and maybe now someone else won't be either. They stepped outside together just as the sun split between the buildings, casting long orange shadows across the concrete. Across town, social media had erupted. A bystander's video of Talia being handcuffed had gone viral overnight. Over 800,000 views and counting. Comment threads lit up with outrage and debate. Some defended the officers. Others demanded accountability for how a federal agent had been treated based solely on suspicion. News outlets had already dubbed it the Reston. Incident questions were piling up. Why hadn't her ID been recognized? Why wasn't there a better verification system for undercover personnel? Why did it take backup agents to de-escalate a situation that should never have escalated? But the real question, the one no one dared to ask aloud, was this. How many Talia Rose types never get to the part where someone listens? Talia watched the headlines scroll across a muted TV in a shop window. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away. Later that afternoon, Chase Lorne was quietly transferred to a secure federal facility in Quantico. No bail, no press, just gone. Arthur Vexley resigned his post citing health issues. By the time reporters reached his house, it was already cleared. No one was allowed inside. Ashier was taken to a black site in Maryland. He wouldn't appear in any legal records, but according to the agent who briefed Talia afterward, he was cooperative. Whatever that meant. Ryan returned to his shift 3 days later. He drove slower, watched more carefully, thought longer before speaking. The next time he pulled someone over, he checked the ID 3 times, and then looked at the person, not just the credentials. But Talia was already gone by then, back in the wind. Her name cleared, her mission intact, and the world none the wiser, except for one small town that wouldn't forget her face anytime soon. Her SUV moved quietly along the winding roads outside of Reston. She didn't use GPS, never had to. Her directions came encrypted through channels most people didn't even know existed. A new assignment waited 3 states away, and she had just enough time to breathe before disappearing again. The trees blurred past her window, but her mind wasn't on the scenery. It was still on the question Ryan had asked before she left. Does this ever get easier? She hadn't answered then, not because she didn't know, but because the truth wasn't the kind of thing you said aloud in a hallway. Now, hours later, she whispered it to herself. No, but you stop expecting it to. She pulled off at a rest stop to refill her thermos. Inside, the clerk gave her a polite nod. He recognized her from somewhere, but couldn't quite place it. Maybe he'd seen the video, maybe not. Either way, she didn't offer more. Back at her car, a news alert flashed on her phone. Reston Police. Department announces new federal liaison role after internal oversight incident. Below it was a photo of Ryan. Clean-shaven, serious, a badge clipped to his belt like it meant something now. Less for show, more for responsibility. Talia exhaled softly through her nose. It wasn't exactly pride, but something close. Back. On the road, her thoughts drifted to all the things people never see. The close calls, the deleted footage, the agents who disappear without a goodbye. Most people think the danger lies in foreign names, forged passports, men in dark vans. But more often, it's in the ordinary moments. A broken taillight, a voice asking for ID, a decision made in 5 seconds that decides whether someone gets to keep breathing. The real threat is always hiding in what feels familiar. She checked her side mirror. No one was following. Still, she exited the highway a mile early and took a winding route through a quiet neighborhood. Just a precaution, a habit now, one that wouldn't go away. A call came through her earpiece. "Agent Monroe," the voice said. "You're cleared for briefing." "Go ahead." "There's chatter in Nashville, same network. Might be a test drop this time." Send the packet, she said. I'll review it en route. She ended the call and turned the radio down. Silence. She preferred it that way. At the next red light, a little girl crossed the street with her mother, braids bouncing, backpack swinging. The woman looked tired but alert. Protective. Talia watched them for a beat, then allowed herself a faint smile. There were people out there fighting, with signs, cameras, court filings, and she respected that. But her weapon had always been different. Silence, precision, and the kind of patience that outlasted the noise. What happened in Reston wouldn't make front pages. The story would be watered down, distorted, politicized. But somewhere in that town, a teenager in a red hoodie still had the raw video, and she wasn't taking it down. Not for the police, not for anyone. And somewhere else, Ryan Donnelly would keep doing his job. But now he'd take a second longer before making a call. He'd listen first. That was enough for Talia. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with a headline or a parade. Sometimes it comes with a pause, just long enough to make a different choice. One that might save a life. She merged back onto the highway. New mission, new city, same risk. And she was ready. So the next time you see someone pulled over, handcuffed, or questioned, remember, not every story looks the way you expect. People like Talia don't always wear uniforms or carry titles, but they're out there every day, unseen, unheard, quietly working to keep the balance from tipping too far. And maybe, just maybe, real change begins with something simple. Asking questions before making assumptions. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe. More real stories, more voices that matter. One story at a time.